Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident god of thunder, where I discuss Thor feats, battles, story arcs, villains, and more. On April 10th, 2017, Marvel released the first trailer for Thor Ragnarok, and I am going to go through it frame by frame to break it down. Plus, Thor lifts the weight of 20 planets. This is Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, Prince of Asgard. I am an Avenger, and this world is under my protection.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if it be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Okay, first off, if you have not yet seen the trailer, stop this video and click the link in the description below to watch it. Now let's get started. The trailer begins with Thor being lowered down in chains to a volcanic-like area. This is likely either Hell or Muspelheim. Now the Asgardian version of Hell is where most souls go when they die. It's not like the traditional Hell, as it's really not a place of torture as it is a place less desirable than the alternative. Also, it's spelled with only one L, unlike the traditional Hell. Now, Hell is not traditionally a volcanic place, but it is Hela's domain, and she is a likely candidate to have imprisoned Thor. The more likely candidate is Muspelheim, the realm of fire, home to the fire demon Surtur, who is also confirmed to be in the movie. Now notice how, as he's being lowered down, the sculptures of some kind of creatures come alive with fire. These could be Surtur's minions in Muspelheim, or souls in Hell. Then we get a quick shot of Hela, then Thor throws Mjolnir at Hela and she stops it. It is important to point out that she does not lift it as she's not worthy, but she stops it from continuing on its current path. Notice how her arm is shaking. She's not stressed, but she's clearly not in control of the movement of the hammer. It's an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Hela then destroys Mjolnir, causing an explosion of lightning that knocks Thor back. Here we can clearly see that these events do not take place on Asgard, but rather it appears to take place in New York City. Mjolnir is now broken, just like in the Ragnarok storyline, which this movie is based partially on. Hela is shown turning her head with her traditional comic headdress on. Now, given the lighting and a shot coming up later, I think this is part of a flashback. Possibly a prologue like the ones at the beginnings of the other Thor movies. Now we get a shot of Asgard in all its glory, and then Hela stands in front of the armies of Asgard like in the first concept art released for the movie. Then Hela draws a sword. It is unclear, but she may be using her power to make weapons out of thin air, as Cate Blanchett mentioned in an interview. Then an explosion destroys parts of Asgard and seemingly launches Thor to Sakaar. There he is captured by Valkyrie. Then we see what I believe to be also part of the prologue, as several Valkyries on their traditional winged horses charge Hela, but she seemingly defeats them all. Thor is taken to the Grandmaster, who Valkyrie seemingly serves to provide gladiators for his gladiatorial games. Grandmaster does not have his traditional blue skin, but he has a blue mark on his chin similar to the one the Collector had in Guardians of the Galaxy. Then we see a very ragged looking Heimdall who is not wearing his trademark armor and has long hair. He could have survived the destruction of Asgard and be in hiding, or he could be dead, as was hinted in Avengers Age of Ultron. He uses a sword to kill a creature who may be an alien, or given its resemblance to Hela, it could be a servant of Hela. Next, we see a very comic-accurate looking Scourge, the Executioner. Now, given that he is wielding two machine guns and is rumored to serve Hela in the movie, he will likely follow a similar path as he did in Thor number 362, which I would not recommend reading until after you've seen the movie due to spoilers. We see Hela continues her assault on Asgard. Loki appears in a new costume that very much resembles the one he's worn in recent years. Lastly, we see a gladiatorial arena on Sakaar. The arena seems to be indoors and much cleaner than the one in the comics, which more resembled a traditional sandy coliseum. Thor walks in and puts on his helmet. Now, this is only the second time we've seen Thor's trademark winged helmet appear, and this is a brand new one, likely given to him on Sakaar. It closely resembles the one he wore in Thor God of Thunder. Now let's quickly discuss Thor's overall costume in the movie, which seems to borrow elements from various costumes in the comics, much like Thor's other movie costumes. The costume borrows elements from the Thor God of Thunder costume in its dirty dark colors and the discs being farther up than most costumes. The costume also borrows elements from the young Thor costume, also in Thor God of Thunder, with a sash connecting to a disc, and that disc being the one that holds up the cape. It is also very reminiscent of the Thor Ages of Thunder storyline, as it has only 2 discs on the chest and a sash across. Now, Hulk enters the arena in gear very much resembling what he wore in the Planet Hulk storyline. The only real difference is the white war paint and a blue shoulder pad, instead of the traditional one. Grandmaster expresses surprise as Thor is pleased to see the Hulk, who would likely terrify most. And we see that Loki is sitting next to Grandmaster. He seems to be a guest and invited to watch the event. Then Hulk charges Thor, but we can see that he no longer has his axe and hammer, which he had when he first entered the arena. So he either dropped them before charging, or this is later in the fight. Probably the latter, as when Thor charges Hulk, he does not have weapons either. And that's the end. We'll have to wait till November to confirm all my suspicions.
I give you your incredible...
In Thor Annual number 9, Thor is crushed under an energy field. According to Thor himself, that energy field was constricting and crushing him under the weight of a score of planets. Now, a score is derived from an Old Norse word that simply means 20. Thor is being crushed by the weight of 20 planets. Now, surviving that is very impressive, but he not only survives it, he lifts the weight of 20 planets with one arm. In the annual, we see Thor standing up and attacking his foe, but right when the weight of the planets is put on him, he's immediately knocked to the ground. Notice how his arms are nowhere near his leg area. Now Thor escapes by using Mjolnir to fire a blast at the hand projecting the field on him. Notice the position of Thor's arms. Now compare this with how he looked earlier, and you'll see that Thor had to push up the weight of 20 planets with one arm. The Earth weighs 6.6 sextillion tons, as we discussed earlier. If Thor was talking about 20 Earth-sized planets, then he lifted 132 sextillion tons with one arm. Now, Jupiter is about 317.8 times the weight of the Earth, at a whopping 1.9 quatuor vigintillion tons. Multiply that by 20 to get 38 quater vigintillion tons. Again, we don't know exactly which planets Thor was referring to, but it was likely a lot of weight for anyone to lift with one arm. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. Originally, this episode was going to be about Thor Blood Oath, but the trailer for Ragnarok came out, so that was delayed and will likely be the next episode. If you want to keep up with Thor Talk and even vote on topics for future episodes, follow Thor Talk on Instagram @ThorTalk. And once again, I'd like to formally state that all art and video is owned by its respected companies, and I own none of it. With that said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll behold in breathless wonder